Imagine imagine an airman gets a massive payout,
Yeah.
like a $100,000 re-enlistment bonus.
Right, life-changing money.
Exactly. Now, imagine they lose thousands of dollars of that bonus simply because they signed the paperwork on a Tuesday instead of a Monday.
Yeah, just a one-day administrative error.
Right. Or picture a scenario where an uncorrected behavioral issue just completely spirals into a career-ending administrative discharge. And all because a supervisor assumed some automated computer system would remind them to have a conversation.
Which happens, unfortunately, way more often than you'd think.
It does. Welcome to the high-stakes, hyper-specific world of Air Force talent management. We are scanning the Airman Development and Testing Chart specifically to decode the exact expectations placed upon you as a technical sergeant.
The stakes here are incredibly high.
They really are. So welcome as we open the Blue Suit files to analyze Chapter 8 of the Air Force Handbook 1.
Our mission today is straightforward, right? We are dissecting assessments and recognition.
Yeah. And if you are stepping into the role of a technical sergeant, you really have to understand that these forms, they're not just paperwork.
No, not at all.
They are the literal blueprint of your airmen's careers.
Yeah, and to understand what is required of you as a technical sergeant, we first need to establish the parameters of the Airman Development and Testing Chart, the ADTC.
Right, because that dictates exactly what you need to know and how well you need to know it.
Exactly. It dictates the level of comprehension necessary for each rank. So for Chapter 8, you aren't merely expected to, just memorize facts.
You can't just flashcard this stuff.
No, you really can't. For Section 8A, which is the Airman Comprehensive Assessment, and Section 8B, Performance Evaluations, a technical sergeant must perform at Level C.
Level C. And
That is defined clinically as applying.
Applying, okay.
Right. So this requires actually carrying out procedures, executing and implementing learned material in real-world situations. I mean, you are the operator of this machinery.
Right, you're turning the wrenches.
Exactly. However, for Section 8C, which covers reenlistments and continuation, and Section 8D, awards and decorations, the requirement actually shifts to Level B.
Which is understanding, right?
Understanding. This means constructing meaning, explaining, and summarizing the systemic logic to your subordinates.
You have to be able to explain the why to your people.
Precisely.
So we're setting a very clinical, highly analytical tone for this deep dive. I mean, there's absolutely no room for ambiguity here.
None. The system doesn't care about your feelings.
Right. We are focusing on the systemic mechanics of Air Force regulations and, frankly, the severe administrative consequences of failure.
Because the fallout is real.
It is. We're going to examine the exact procedures you must apply, the retention ecosystems you have to understand, and what happens when these standardized systems are ignored or improperly executed.
Yeah, the stakes are entirely administrative, which means they are absolute. A failure in documentation is quite literally a failure in command.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's look directly at the Airman Comprehensive Assessment, the ACA.
This is the Level C requirement we mentioned, applying.
Right. You must understand the real-world utility of the system. The ACA is not a suggestion. It is a mandatory, formal, two-way communication system.
Two-way being the operative word there.
Exactly. Its explicit design is to calibrate expectations between a rater and a ratee. It forces a structured discussion on standards, responsibilities, expectations, and goals.
And if you skip that...
Without that initial calibration, the entire evaluation ecosystem just collapses.
I want to focus on that phrase for a second, two-way communication system. Because to me, that implies that the Air Force doesn't view feedback as just some monologue delivered from on high.
No, it's not a lecture.
Right. It's a documented contract of executions. If you're the rater, you can't just, hand an airman a sheet of paper and tell him to read it and sign it.
Right. The mechanics of this application are highly specific. Raters must document the feedback session in detail. They have to assess and discuss objectives, standards, behavior, performance, all of it. Furthermore, the text mandates that during these sessions, raters will actually provide the ratee with information on Air Force benefits.
Oh, really? During the feedback session?
Yeah, by directly referring them to the My Air Force Benefits website. It's a mandatory part of the procedure. You, acting as a rater, must apply this flawlessly.
So it's not just about what they're doing wrong, it's about what the Air Force is providing them.
Exactly. And the output of this process is heavily regulated too. Once the assessment is complete, the rater must give the original, completed, and signed worksheet directly to the ratee.
They get the original.
Yes. And then the rater is required to maintain copies of all completed assessments and signed notices. You are essentially creating an audit trail.
Right, because if things go south later, you need the receipts.
Precisely.
And there's a specific worksheet tailored to every tier of the Air Force, right? Like, this system won't let you use a one-size-fits-all approach to feedback.
No, because the expectations scale with rank.
Right. So you will primarily utilize the AF Form 931, and that's the Airman Comprehensive Assessment Worksheet designated for Airman Basic through Technical Sergeant.
Right. But if you're evaluating a Senior Noncommissioned Officer, the form changes. You use the AF Form 932.
Okay, 932 for senior NCOs.
Yep. And for officers, it's the AF Form 724, along with a mandatory addendum, which is the AF Form 724A.
So the paperwork itself enforces the different standards.
Exactly. But let's look at the practical scenarios here, specifically the timeline. Because the timeline is not a rough guideline.
No, I imagine it's pretty strict.
It's a rigid framework. All initial performance feedback assessment sessions must be conducted within the first 60 days of when supervision begins.
60 days. Okay, Think about the logic behind that specific window. Why exactly 60 days?
Well, it provides enough time for the rater to observe the baseline behaviors of the rater, right? But it's early enough in the reporting period to actually correct deficiencies before they become a permanent part of the record.
That makes sense. You give them a chance to fix it.
Right. And this is the only initial feedback the ratee will receive until there's a change of reporting official.
Okay, so what happens after the initial session?
Then the midterm assessment must occur exactly midway between the date supervision begins and the projected closeout date of the next evaluation.
Exactly midway.
Yes. And for the end of reporting period, the session has to happen within 60 days after the evaluation has been accomplished.
Okay, so it's a constant cyclical data loop.
Yeah.
But what stands out to me about the text is that it notes ratees may actually request feedback at any time, provided 60 days have passed since their last session.
Yeah, that's a crucial point.
It places this active mechanism right in the hands of the subordinate. Like, they can force the calibration if they feel they're flying blind.
It absolutely does. It reinforces that whole two-way street concept we talked about. But the system also accounts for anomalies on the leadership side.
What do you mean? Like if the supervisor is gone?
Yeah, what happens when a rater is simply unavailable? The system cannot stall just because one node is offline.
The machine has to keep running.
Right. So the regulation states that when a lower-level rater is unavailable due to unusual circumstances, or when officially assuming the subordinate rater's responsibilities, the rater's rater will step in and conduct the sessions.
The rater's rater, so it just bumps up a level.
Exactly. The administrative machine demands a continuous flow of data. If the primary sensor fails, the secondary sensor takes over.
That is incredibly clinical. But I want to highlight a distinct vagueness I noticed in the text regarding the actual method of delivery.
Oh, the face-to-face requirement.
Yeah. Raters are instructed to conduct private, face-to-face feedback, and the text explicitly allows for video conferencing, which, makes sense in a modern distributed force.
Right. Telework is everywhere now.
Exactly. However, it states raters may only conduct sessions by telephone in unusual circumstances where face-to-face sessions are impractical.
Yeah, that word unusual does a lot of heavy lifting there.
It really does. The definition of unusual is left entirely up to interpretation. Is a temporary duty assignment unusual? Is a conflicting shift schedule unusual?
The text doesn't explicitly say.
No, it doesn't. But the systemic intent seems pretty clear. Physical or visual presence is the gold standard. The Air Force wants you looking your subordinate in the eye when you define their career trajectory.
They want you to have to actually face them. And this brings us to the fallout of failure, which is where things get really serious.
Consequences.
Right. The consequence of ignoring this system is absolute. Unit commanders are responsible for developing a tracking mechanism to ensure these assessments occur.
So it's on the commander.
Fundamentally, yes, it's a commander's program. In most cases, the military personnel flight provides a computer-generated notice within 30 days of supervision beginning, just to remind the rater.
An automated email, basically.
Basically, but here is the clinical directive. Failure to receive a performance feedback assessment notice does not justify failing to hold a required session.
Wait, let me stop you there and push back on this.
Sure.
If the automated computer system, which is the official tracking mechanism, fails to notify the rater, The rater is still held entirely responsible for missing the feedback session.
Absolutely.
The fault lies solely with the human element.
100%. You cannot blame the IT system. The administrative machine failing to send an alert does not absolve you of your supervisory duty.
Wow.
Yeah. The Air Force views feedback as a core leadership competency. It's not just a passive administrative task that you only complete when your Outlook calendar sends you a ping.
Right.
If you rely on the computer to tell you to lead your people, you have already failed the standard.
That is a harsh reality. And the text also places a strict burden on the rater, completely eliminating any sort of passive victimhood.
Yeah, you can't just hide.
Exactly. If a required session does not take place, raters are expected to notify the rater, and if necessary, the rater's rater. You can't simply sit quietly, watch the deadline pass, and then use the lack of feedback as an excuse for your own poor performance later on.
Correct. The system doesn't allow for plausible deniability on either end. And, the consequence of vague feedback is just as severe as no feedback at all.
Oh, so?
Well, the text mandates that feedback, whether it's positive or negative, needs to be highly specific. Specific positive comments reinforce desired behavior.
Right.
And specific negative comments focus attention exactly where improvement is needed. If you deliver vague feedback, you leave your airmen flying blind.
You're not actually helping them.
No. You rob them of the ability to calibrate their performance to the required standard.
I compare the Airman Comprehensive Assessment to, like, a pre-flight diagnostic check.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Right. If you skip the diagnostic check because you didn't get an automated reminder, and then the system experiences a catastrophic failure during operation, the fault does not lie with the automated reminder.
No, it lies with the maintainer.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
The fault lies entirely with the technician who ignored the required maintenance schedule. The ACA is your diagnostic check. Skipping it guarantees downstream failure.
Yeah, the actionable takeaways here are absolutely critical. You must execute specific, objective feedback using the exact designated forms on a strict timeline.
And if you don't?
If you fail to apply this initial calibration correctly, the entire performance evaluation system downstream is totally compromised. You cannot accurately or ethically evaluate an airman at the end of a reporting period if you never establish the baseline standards at the beginning.
It's basically a setup for failure.
It is.
So the ACA is the roadmap you hand the airman at the beginning of the journey. But eventually the trip ends and they need a grade.
Great. The final score.
Exactly. How does that initial feedback translate into their permanent long-term record? That brings us directly to Section 8B, performance evaluations.
And again, the required comprehension level here remains level C applying.
Right. You're still actively operating the system.
Yes. The performance evaluation system provides a reliable, long-term, cumulative record of performance and potential. This is not some temporary file that gets purged every year.
It follows you forever.
It does. This is the permanent data used for all major talent management decisions. It dictates promotion recommendations, selective continuations, assignments, and involuntary separations.
So you really have to apply strict rules of documentation.
Extremely strict. Evaluations are categorized as controlled unclassified information, CUI.
Which means they have to be handled a certain way.
Yes. They must be marked, protected, and accessed accordingly. Custodial offices determine if a requester's official duties actually require access.
So you do not just leave these documents sitting on a shared drive or out on a desk for anyone to read?
Definitely not. But while CUI is strict, the rules regarding classified information are absolute and uncompromising.
Security always wins.
Security always supersedes documentation detail. Do not enter classified information in any section of the evaluation, attachments, or referral documents.
Period.
Period. If an entry would release classified information, the evaluator must use the exact phrase data masked in place of that entry.
Just literally those two words.
Yeah.
Data mask.
Yes. And if the evaluator is assigned to a classified location, they enter data masked for the organization nomenclature and absolutely nothing more.
That's fascinating. The administrative machine essentially recognizes that an accurate performance report is completely secondary to operational security.
Oh, without question. The system will gladly accept an incomplete-looking form to protect national security.
Okay, but for the unclassified stuff, let's examine the performance statements themselves. Because the text demands a stark, unyielding, two-part formula.
Right, you can't just write a paragraph of praise.
No. You have to include at least one performance statement in each section being evaluated. And a performance statement is a standalone sentence that must include exactly two elements.
Just two.
Yep. 1, the behavior or action taken by the airman. 2, The impact, results, or outcome of that behavior or action. It is a strict cause and effect equation.
Action and impact. And this is where we really must look at the scenarios involving adverse information and problem airmen, because that formula applies equally to failure.
The bad stuff has to be documented just as precisely as the good stuff.
Exactly. The regulations require a mandatory notation on the member's next performance report for any substantiated allegation of a sex-related offense against an airman, regardless of grade.
Mandatory notation.
Yes, mandatory. If it results in a conviction by court-martial, non-judicial punishment, or other adverse administrative action, it has to be on the report.
The text goes even further regarding the chain of command's responsibility here, too. Commanders must conduct a record review of all personnel transferring into their command.
Right, an inbound review.
To ensure familiarization with any history of sex-related offenses. This is done specifically to reduce the likelihood that repeat offenses escape notice just because a member changes duty stations.
It's closing a loophole.
Exactly. And this responsibility is absolute. It cannot be delegated down to a subordinate. The system is intentionally designed to prevent predators from hiding in a new unit due to administrative oversight.
And you know, the civilian world is also not separate from the military record in these cases.
Oh, really? So what happens off base matters just as much?
Absolutely. For adverse actions, reportable civilian offenses or convictions, other than, like, minor motor vehicle violations not requiring a court appearance, must be handled appropriately.
Define conviction in this context, though, because civilian courts are complicated.
The text defines these convictions incredibly clinically. It includes any finding of guilt, any plea of guilty, any plea of no contest, any plea of guilty in exchange for deferred prosecution, or any similar disposition.
Oh, wow. So even if you cut a deal.
Yeah, the legal maneuverings of the civilian court system do not shield the member from the military administrative machine. If a military law enforcement official receives this information, they shall forward it to the member's immediate commander.
It all comes back to the military record.
Yeah.
But this is the critical point where the system often fails due to, well, human hesitation.
Supervisors not wanting to ruin a career.
Exactly. The clinical analysis of failure in this section focuses entirely on the suppression of data. The expectation is fair and equal treatment. The text states explicitly, failure to document misconduct that deviates from the core values of the USAF is a disservice to all airmen who serve with honor and distinction.
And this is where you, as a technical sergeant, must actively push back on vague language. The regulation prohibits sweeping facts under the rug to protect someone's career.
No coded language.
Right, writing phrases like conduct unbecoming or an error in judgment led to an off-duty incident that is explicitly labeled as too vague and unacceptable.
Those phrases are just cowardly.
They are.
They're designed to check an administrative box while hiding the actual data from the promotion board. The documentation has to be brutally specific.
Can you give the examples from the text?
Yeah, the text provides very valid examples. You must write something like, Master Sergeant Smith drove while intoxicated, for which he received an Article 15.
Clear, clinical.
Or, Captain Jones made improper, sexually suggestive, and harassing comments to a squadron member, for which he received a letter of reprimand. Vague language protects the offender and destroys the integrity of the promotion system.
Because it allows flawed, toxic data into the talent management pool.
Exactly.
And when preparing this assessment, the evaluator must clinically weigh the misconduct against multiple variables to actually quantify the impact.
So they have to filter it.
Right. They have to ask, did it bring discredit on the USAF as an institution? Did it affect the ratee's ability to fulfill assigned duties? Did the mission suffer?
Was unit morale affected?
Exactly. Is a ratee in a sensitive job where they absolutely should have known better? Is this an isolated incident, or is it a repeated pattern? Did the misconduct result in death, injury, or property damage?
You are taking the raw data of the incident and processing it through all these filters to determine the severity of the permanent mark on their record.
Yes. And the actionable takeaway here for the TSGD concerns the actual signature at the bottom of the form.
Right. What does signing it actually mean?
You must understand, and you have to educate your airmen, that signing an evaluation does not mean concurrence.
It doesn't mean you agree with it?
No. Ratees must review evaluations before they become a matter of record, just to catch administrative errors. But when the ratee signs, they are only acknowledging receipt of the completed evaluation.
Just proving it was handed to them.
Exactly. If they disagree with the comments, they must file an appeal after the evaluation becomes a matter of record. The signature is procedural. It is not an admission of agreement.
Okay, so the ratings and the adverse information documented in Section 8B, they directly dictate who is allowed to stay in the Air Force.
They are the foundation of retention.
The evaluation is the primary data source for the retention filter, which leads us directly to Section 8C, reenlistments and continuation.
And here, the required comprehension level actually shifts to level B, understanding.
Okay, so a shift from level C to level B.
Right. You are no longer solely applying a form. You must understand the big picture ecosystem to explain it to your subordinates.
So the retention ecosystem uses targeted programs to balance career fields, retain top talent, and basically eject those who fail to meet standards.
It's a filtering mechanism.
The Air Force does not keep everyone who wants to stay. It is a highly regulated supply and demand model.
It is. So let's break down the analytic why behind these regulations, starting with the Selective Reenlistment Program, or SRP.
The SRP?
Right. This program evaluates airmen to ensure the Air Force only retains those who consistently demonstrate the capability of maintaining professional standards.
And the timelines for this are specific and pretty unforgiving.
Very. First-term airmen receive SRP consideration when they are within 15 months of their expiration of term of service.
15 months out.
Yes. And second-term and career airmen receive consideration within 13 months of their original expiration.
Okay, so when making these retention decisions, commanders are relying on the exact data we just discussed in the previous section.
The EPRs and the ACA data?
Exactly. They consider enlisted performance report ratings and unfavorable information. Supervisors must carefully evaluate duty performance and review the airmen's personnel records.
Everything comes back to the documentation.
It really does. And the text specifically calls out the DA Form 1137, which is the Unfavorable Information File Summary, or UIF.
Ah, the UIF.
Yeah. If an airman has a UIF, it factors directly into their commander's recommendation regarding their career potential. A UIF is essentially a red flag in the system that halts automatic progression.
Right, the machine stops. And if an airman is not selected for reenlistment, a DA Form 418, which is the Selective Reenlistment Program Consideration Denial of Continued Service form, is completed.
Okay, so they're denied, but there's an appeals process, right?
There is, and the appeals process is a perfect example of this systemic logic we keep talking about. The airman has up to 3 calendar days to render an appeal intent.
Just 3 days.
Just 3. And then 10 calendar days to submit the actual appeal. And the appeal authority chain is rigid, and it scales based on the airman's total active federal military service.
It scales.
Yes, it represents the institution's financial and temporal investment in the member.
Break down that scaling logic for us. Like, why does the appeal authority change based on how long the airman has served?
Well, it's a cold calculation of risk and investment. For first-term airmen and for career airmen who are completing 20 years, the appeal authority is the group commander.
Okay, group commander.
Right. But for second-term and career airmen with fewer than 16 years, it escalates up to the wing commander.
Higher up the chain.
Exactly. And for airmen with at least 16 years, but fewer than 20 years, the appeal authority is the Secretary of the Air Force.
Wait, all the way to the SECAF?
All the way to the top. Because think about it. The Air Force has invested over a decade and a half of training and salary into an airman at the 16-year mark.
Millions of dollars, probably.
Exactly. Separating them involuntarily right before they reach retirement eligibility is a massive administrative and financial decision.
So the system elevates the final authority to the highest possible level to ensure it's the right call.
Yes. And the decision of the appeal authority is absolutely final.
Wow. Let's examine another part of this, the Career Job Reservation Program, or CJR, because this is pure supply and demand designed to prevent surpluses and shortages in specific Air Force specialty codes, or AFSCs.
Right, the job codes.
All eligible first-term airmen must have an approved CJR to actually re-enlist.
They need a reservation just to stay in.
Basically, yeah. They are automatically placed on an applicant list. On the first duty day of the month, they complete 35 months on a 4-year enlistment, or 59 months on a 6-year enlistment.
Math is very precise.
Very. And the system divides AFSCs into constrained and unconstrained quotas.
Right, so let's define those. An unconstrained AFSC means there are unlimited quotas.
The door is wide open.
Exactly. The Air Force needs as many of these personnel as it can get. Airmen in these fields do not compete for a CJR. It is automatically awarded, provided their commander has actually selected them for continued service under the SRP.
Okay, so as long as you're not in trouble, you're good.
Right. However, constrained AFSCs have limited quotas. The supply exceeds the demand.
Too many people, not enough slots.
Exactly. So first-term airmen in constrained fields must actively compete against their peers for the right to stay in their job. Commanders recommend award of CJRs, and approvals are made at the group commander level.
Crucially, to be considered for a constrained CJR, the airmen's evaluations must reflect they met minimum expectations.
Which goes back to the evaluations we talked about.
Exactly. It's all connected. They cannot have an unfavorable information file, lost time, or a record of active non-judicial punishment on their current enlistment.
Any of that is an automatic disqualifier.
Right. Adverse data immediately locks them out of a constrained CJR. The system uses past behavioral data to solve future supply problems.
It's incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
And we really must connect the dots on how these concepts relate.
Go ahead.
Because if an airman is in a constrained AFSC and they do not receive a CJR because they were, outcompeted, they are forced into a choice.
What's the choice?
They either separate from the Air Force entirely or they enter the USAF retraining program.
Or retrain.
Yes. Retraining balances career fields by moving personnel from overage fields to shortage fields. The Non-Commissioned Officer Retraining Program operates in 2 phases.
Okay, Phase I and Phase II.
Right. Phase I is voluntary. Airmen from overage AFSCs apply to move into shortage AFSCs.
They raise their hand and say, I'll go.
Exactly. But if Phase I fails to meet the fiscal year objectives,
If they don't get enough volunteers.
the administrative machine just takes over. The Air Force implements Phase II, which is mandatory retraining.
Mandatory. You're moving whether you want to or not.
Right. Airmen are selected based on Air Force needs using a master vulnerability list.
Vulnerability list. That sounds so clinical.
It is. You are either a volunteer in Phase I or you are a casualty of the vulnerability list in Phase II. The system is going to balance itself either with your cooperation or without it.
That is wow. Contrast this intense competition, though, with the Non-Commissioned Officer Career Status Program, because this program essentially grants administrative tenure.
Tenure, like a professor.
Sort of, yeah. Airmen who are selected for continued service and have at least 12 years of total active federal military service on their date of discharge, they will be re-enlisted for an unspecified period.
Unspecified, so they don't have a set end date.
Right. They just serve up to their high year of tenure without needing to repeatedly re-enlist every few years.
Okay, but why the 12-year mark specifically? What is the logic behind granting this unspecified re-enlistment period right then?
Well, the text states this streamlines the process and alleviates unnecessary administrative actions.
Okay.
The logic is clear and very clinical. If an airman has survived 12 years of performance evaluations, the selective reenlistment program, and career job reservation filters, the statistical probability of them requiring heavy administrative oversight to reenlist is incredibly low.
Ah, they've proven they aren't a risk.
Exactly. The system recognizes a proven asset and actively reduces its own workload to maintain them.
That makes perfect sense. Now, I want to focus on the monetary incentive used in retention, which is the Selective Retention Bonus, or SRB.
Big money.
Right. This program pays airmen serving in critical skills, specifically those with retention shortfalls or really high training costs, to reenlist for at least 3 additional years.
Okay.
The designations are broken into zones based on years of service. Zone A is 17 months to 6 years. Zone B is 6 to 10 years. Zone C is 10 to 14 years. And Zone E is 18 to 20 years.
Think about why Zone A starts at exactly 17 months, though. That is the exact window when a young airman has finally mastered their primary duties.
Yes, the training wheels are off.
Exactly. The military has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in their technical training, and the civilian sector starts looking at them and trying to poach them.
Right, they become highly marketable.
So the SRB is not just a reward. It is a calculated mathematical counteroffer to retain human capital.
It's a business transaction.
It really is.
Yeah.
And an airman can receive an SRB in each zone over their career, but only one per zone.
Right, and the mathematical formula for this is explicit. The SRB is calculated using 1 month's base pay multiplied by the number of years they are reenlisting for, multiplied by the SRB multiple that's listed on the authorized listing.
Okay. And there's a cap, right?
Yes, the absolute cap is $100,000 per zone. But here is the critical operational detail regarding the specific base pay math.
This is where people get burned.
Big time. The text states the airman's base pay on the date of discharge, which is the day prior to reenlistment, is used to calculate the SRB.
So this is where timing becomes quite literally everything.
Yes. Let us play out that hypothetical scenario we mentioned at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Okay, let's hear it.
If an airman is promoted to staff sergeant on May 1st, and they reenlist that exact same day, May 1st, the SRB is calculated on the base pay of the day prior.
Which is April 30th.
Right, and on April 30th, that member was still a senior airman.
Ouch.
Yeah, they lose the staff sergeant multiplier for the entire calculation.
That is brutal. It kind of sounds like closing on a house, right?
Yeah.
The interest rate is locked the day before you sign the papers. If you miscalculate the dates by 24 hours, you lose thousands of dollars.
Exactly. It requires clinical, precise timing by the airmen and their leadership to maximize their payout.
So the key takeaway for a technical sergeant in Section 8C is that retention is a massive, data-driven filter. Your airmen are competing against quotas.
Constantly.
An unfavorable information file will immediately neutralize their ability to secure a career job reservation in a constrained field.
Yep.
You must understand these timelines to advise your subordinates accurately, because a simple paperwork error regarding a promotion date can cost them $10,000.
It's a massive responsibility.
It is. So while the SRP, CJR, and SRB represent the cold, systemic, mathematical functions of retention, awards and decorations are the institutional recognition tools used to foster the morale required to retain individuals.
We're moving from the math to the morale.
Exactly. We transition to Section 8D, awards and decorations, and the required comprehension level remains level B, understanding.
Right. So the philosophy of the decorations program is outlined in DEFMAN 36-2806. It is designed to recognize acts of valor, heroism, and exceptional service, to foster morale, provide incentive, and instill esprit de corps.
Sounds very uplifting.
It does, but the text explicitly states that individuals or units considered for awards must clearly demonstrate sustained and superior performance.
So no participation trophies.
Exactly. The system does not reward basic competency. Doing your job isn't enough.
Let's meticulously categorize this system, starting with unit awards. These are presented to military units distinguishing themselves during peacetime or in action against hostile forces.
Right.
Only one unit award is given for the same achievement. Subordinate units may share the award, but higher organizations may not.
So it flows down, not up.
Exactly. All personnel assigned to the unit during the period who directly contributed to the mission are authorized the ribbon.
And the hierarchy for these is really strict. The Presidential Unit Citation is the highest, awarded for extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy.
Extraordinary heroism.
Yes. The unit must have displayed gallantry under hazardous conditions, setting it apart from other units in the same campaign.
Okay, what's next?
Then there's the Gallant Unit Citation, which recognizes extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy, specifically since September 11th, 2001.
Okay, so post 9/11 specific award.
Right. And the Meritorious Unit Award recognizes outstanding achievement in direct support of combat operations for at least 90 continuous days.
90 days. Very specific. Then there is the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award and the Air Force Organizational Excellence Award.
Right.
And the text mandates a rigid quota for these. Commanders must annually review accomplishments, but only 10% of similar units assigned to a command are recommended annually.
Only 10%. Why artificially restrict the supply like that?
Because scarcity creates value. Right. If every unit receives the Outstanding Unit Award, the word outstanding just loses its institutional meaning entirely.
That makes sense.
The system protects the prestige of the award through a strict mathematical quota.
So we must also define campaign, expeditionary, and service awards.
Right.
These recognize participation in campaigns or attainment of a requirement. The text lists specific operations and timeframes.
Give us some examples.
So the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal requires 30 consecutive days or 60 non-consecutive days of participation.
Okay.
The Afghanistan Campaign Medal and Iraq Campaign Medal were established to recognize service in those designated operations, replacing the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal for those deployments effective May 1st, 2005.
So the date of the deployment dictates the medal.
Exactly. The Inherent Resolve Campaign Medal recognizes qualifying service on or after June 15, 2014. The Kosovo Campaign Medal covers service between March 1999 and December 2013.
So the timeframes and geographical boundaries are clinically defined. You either fall within the parameters or you do not. There's no gray area.
None. But the highest level of recognition involves individual decorations.
Individual decorations.
Right. A decoration is formal recognition requiring individual nomination and approval. It recognizes acts placing members clearly above their peers.
And what are the determining factors for that?
They involve the member's level of responsibility, achievements, manner of performance, and the impact of the accomplishment. You cannot receive more than one decoration for the same act.
No, double dipping.
Exactly. And crucially, circling back to our discussion on performance evaluations, do not include controlled unclassified information or classified information in a regular decoration recommendation.
Ever.
Never. The narrative must be completely unclassified.
Okay, let's review the top Air Force decorations. Number 1 is obviously the Medal of Honor.
Right.
It's the highest decoration for heroism in military action, awarded for conspicuous gallantry above and beyond the call of duty at the risk of life. It is generally presented by the U.S. President.
And recipients actually receive special benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
They do. Number 2 is the Air Force Cross, awarded for extraordinary heroism that merits high recognition, but just does not meet the strict criteria for the Medal of Honor.
It's the next tier down.
Right. Number 3 is the Distinguished Service Medal, recognizing exceptionally meritorious service to the nation in a duty of great responsibility, usually involving major command or program authority.
Generally for very senior leaders.
Yes. Number 4 is the Silver Star, the third highest military combat decoration, awarded for gallantry in action against an enemy.
Okay.
And number 5 is the Legion of Merit, awarded for exceptionally meritorious conduct in performing outstanding duties.
We really need to highlight specific distinctions in the text here because the details define the heroism.
Right, the nuances matter.
They do. The Distinguished Flying Cross is awarded for heroism or extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight for entirely distinctive operations.
Okay.
But the Air Medal is also for heroism or meritorious achievement during aerial flight, but for acts above what is expected, yet not warranting the Distinguished Flying Cross.
So there is a clear scale of magnitude.
Exactly. Look at the Bronze Star Medal versus the Airman's Medal.
This is a great comparison.
Right. The Bronze Star is awarded for heroism or meritorious achievement not involving aerial flight while engaged in an action against an enemy.
Keywords. Against an enemy.
Exactly. The Airman's Medal is awarded for heroism involving voluntary risk of life under conditions other than those of conflict with an armed enemy.
That is a critical distinction. The presence of an armed enemy changes the category of the medal entirely.
It really does. You could perform the exact same physical act of bravery, like pulling someone from a burning vehicle, but if you do it in a combat zone under fire, it falls under a different systemic category than if you do it stateside responding to a car crash on the highway.
The system categorizes the context, not just the action.
Exactly.
Hold on, let us connect the dots regarding how these concepts relate. Specifically, the difference between a decoration requiring a recommendation and an entitlement.
Oh, this is important.
Because the Purple Heart is an entitlement. It is awarded for wounds received or death after being wounded in any action against an enemy of the United States. You do not need a commander to recommend you for a Purple Heart.
Right. It's not subjective.
Exactly. If the medical and operational facts are verified, you are legally entitled to it.
And the text highlights a critical post-9/11 expansion of this entitlement.
Right, the terrorism clause.
Yeah. A service member on active duty who is attacked by a foreign terrorist organization targeting them due to their military status may be awarded the Purple Heart.
But there are specific criteria.
Very specific. The regulation clinically defines this. The attack must be inspired or motivated by the foreign terrorist organization, and the attacker must have been in communication with that organization before the attack.
So it can't just be a lone wolf with no connection.
Exactly. This modernizes the definition of hostile action to reflect asymmetric warfare.
And this brings me to a critical question regarding modernization. The text outlines the Remote Combat Effects Campaign Medal. How does the military recognize personnel who inflict severe damage on the enemy, but they are sitting in a secure facility thousands of miles away?
Well, the text provides specific criteria for this too. The member must have served in a remotely piloted aircraft, cyber, space, or intelligence career field.
Okay.
They must have personally provided hands-on employment of a weapon system that had a direct and immediate impact on a combat operation.
Direct and immediate impact.
Yes. And, crucially, they were not physically exposed to hostile actions.
So the definition of the battlefield has fundamentally shifted from physical geography to digital and remote spheres.
It has.
And the recognition system has clinically adapted to measure digital impact without physical risk.
Which is fascinating.
It is. The key takeaway for a technical sergeant here is that awards require concrete justification letters.
You have to prove it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The text demands concrete examples describing the action performed, adhering to the exact same strict behavior and impact formula we discussed earlier in evaluation.
Right. Action and impact.
These are not participation trophies. They require sustained, superior performance or distinct acts of heroism. A technical sergeant must understand this hierarchy to appropriately write recommendations for their subordinates that will actually survive the intense scrutiny of the approval chain.
Because if you write a weak package, it gets kicked back.
Every time. Well, we have completed our scan of Chapter 8. Let us synthesize this deep dive.
It's a lot of information.
It is. From the precise documentation required in the Airman Comprehensive Assessment and the strict behavior and impact formulas of performance evaluations,
Right.
to the mathematical realities of retention bonuses, career job reservations, and the rigid hierarchy of the decorations program, Chapter 8 dictates a highly clinical, standardized system.
It's an administrative machine.
And for a technical sergeant, mastery of these regulations is not optional. It is the structural framework of your leadership.
You have to know it.
If you fail to apply the ACA, the evaluation fails. If the evaluation fails, the retention system operates on flawed data.
It's a domino effect.
Exactly. The administrative machine requires perfect inputs to produce fair outputs. You are responsible for those inputs.
This leaves us with a final provocative thought to consider.
That's here.
The entire evaluation and retention system we just analyzed relies heavily on specific, quantifiable data. It demands strictly formatted performance statements, distilling actions into a stark, two-part formula of behavior and impact.
Right.
But how does an institution accurately measure and document the unquantifiable human elements of leadership?
What do you mean?
How do you write a behavior and impact statement for an instinct that prevented a crisis? Or the empathy that saved an airman's career? Or the invisible force of morale building when the administrative machine only recognizes what can be clinically observed and mathematically weighed?